biggest news of the week, Cody, was the Tigers finally. Prayers were answered amongst the fans. They signed a third baseman.
A
Gio,
veteran third
a
baseman.
veteran third baseman, Gio Urshela, 1 year, $1.5 million with some incentives that, he may or may not get, but more or less 1 year, $1.5 million. As I put on X, the king of the 1 year deal strikes again. Strikes again. Scott Harris just can't help himself, man. He just can't help himself. He loves 1 year deals, and I'll tell you, like my initial reaction is like, "Oh, this is a nice little move. That's my nice little move. Nice little solid move. Get a professional in there, guy with some track record, guy who's good at several aspects of being a baseball player. Not great at any of them. That's why you sign one for 1.5." And then I got an X. And I was like, ooh, this might be the most, in terms of signings in recent Tigers history, this might be the most reactions per dollar that I've seen a Tigers player get, because there was a lot of disappointment. Kind of related to Gio, not directly related, but kind of related. Like, you had people like the Lipschitz camp, like came out strong. The Kreidler camp came out strong. And I have nothing against these guys. In terms of their stature in the organization, like I like them. I see their skill set. I see like what they could bring to the table. This is not me talking ill on them. However, I just don't view them as guys that are reasons to not make a move, is like the way I would phrase it. Like, if they would have signed a second baseman this offseason, I would have viewed Colt Keith as a reason to not make a move. And that, played itself out with the contract and all this stuff. But their third base options were, respectfully speaking, some guys. There's some dudes there, some skill sets that you can utilize, some versatility that you like, but nobody that's beyond reproach. And then even when it comes to the guys who will be at the bottom of the roster bubble, whatever you want to call it, nobody beyond reproach. You're not taking away anything grand, in my opinion. So I had no qualms with the Geo signing. I don't think this is gonna. It's not a signing that was designed to put the team over the top. It's not going to, but I thought it was fine. I thought it was a nice, solid signing, and I was shocked by the amount of pushback that something like this garnered on social media, because I just thought that it was still an improvement of your overall talent and roster for little cost and literally no long-term liability. So your reaction to the Geo signing and how he kind of fits into to the team.
Well, I think it makes the team better, so I like the move. I think you feel a lot better about the 13 guys who are going to be on your roster with Gio Urshela theoretically pushing like a Matt Vierling to a more versatile bench role. So the last guys off your bench, probably Ibanez, McKinstry, whereas otherwise the last guys off your bench, probably looking at more of a Kreidler. Kreidler does a lot of good things defensively, but the bat is a huge question mark. So I think your team is better with Gio Urshela on it. You get him 1 year, really cheap. And there's a little bit of, I hate to use that upside word, but there's some upside here. He has been a good hitter for most of his career. He was injured last year, but just 2 years ago, he was a two-win player. Very good bat to ball skills, crushes lefties, 290 career hitter against lefties. I think he was up in the 300s, high 300s against lefties in a short sample last year. So he's going to fit that platoon. I think you can plug him in at third base against lefties, maybe even against righties. His numbers better than what Zach McKinstry, your lefty bat, did against righties last year, and somewhat comparable to Matt Vierling. The defensive metrics are a whole other conversation. Defensive runs saved, loves him. He's had gold glove votes before. Outs above average, hates him. So that gets a little bit in the weeds. Outs above average, very ranged based. Defensive runs saved, a little bit more all encompassing. So maybe he's not the greatest defensive third baseman of all time, but he's pretty good. And so this may not be Matt Chapman. I get it, but I think it's a nice, small, shrewd pickup from Scott Harris that complements the roster, that fits a lot of things they're trying to do. almost to the point where I was like, oh, why did I not think of this? Why was this not on my radar? Gio Urshela makes a lot of sense for the Tigers.
No, he does. And if you watch AJ talk about him, you watch Scott talk about him, there's a level of conviction there that I think is worth noting in terms of what he can do. And I know you just mentioned it, but I want to kind of emphasize this is not a against lefty signing. This is a guy that you could you could play him every day and it's not going to be a detriment to your team, right? Like you could play him every day and you might not have some great upside or whatever at third base, but it's not a detriment to your team to play him every day. Guess what? They're set up. He doesn't have to play every day. And again, it raises the floor of the team a little bit, which as we talked about, as is kind of becoming a little bit of a bigger talking point amongst Tiger folks, is kind of the Scott Harris MO at this point. Like the small baseball move stacking is kind of about raising floors that we haven't seen, nor do I think a lot of it's merit, like the raise the ceiling move, and that's okay right now. That's okay, but the Geo signing also to me, Cody, we talk about it and it's one of those things that I don't necessarily want to like admit wholeheartedly, but at a certain point you got to kind of recognize reality. We're seeing more and more that rosters are basically set more or less coming into spring training. And I know there's going to be some battles for last couple bullpen spots, but we felt coming into this spring training that there wasn't that much wiggle room with the bench players, and now there's even less. And the fact that they made this move at the time that they did tells me that they had a pretty good idea that we'll just throw out the names: the Kreidlers, the Lipschuses, the Justin Henry Malloys weren't necessarily ready right now for what they wanted in order to like move this baseball team forward. That doesn't mean they won't ever be. That doesn't mean these guys aren't going to have their time in the major leagues. They will. We all know this. Akil Baddoo falls in that category as well. You don't have to worry about it. They are going to be wearing the old English D. But this kind of tells me that they had an idea that they needed to upgrade the infield. And I'll say infield, not just third base. They wanted to upgrade the infield. They didn't want to lose any, here's the word, optionality involved, you
Yeah,
know. Uh and they did it at a low cost. There's no downside. By the way, let's just say he starts the season 0 for 300. Just just get rid of him. It doesn't cost you anything. It's okay.
it's true.
You
It's
know,
true.
and Kreidler comes in and he hits 400 and he hits 20 home runs, and we're all okay. We're all okay here. But to me, this is a move that it also kind of adds underrated part of this. I think no one's really talking about it. This is kind of a savvy veteran move too. This is a guy who's been through it in the majors. He's played in big markets. He's changed teams. He's been through injury. On a team like this, I think that's actually kind of valuable too. So to sum up, I just feel like the reaction didn't need to be as negative as it was, in my opinion, because I do think he does help the team and he pushes guys.
Well,
Because now, what do we talk about? Sorry to
yeah,
interrupt, but
that's
what did
true.
we talk about last week? We talked about, well, what happens if Parker can't hit? We all love Parker Meadows. What happens if he can't hit? What are you going to do? What are all these options? Blah, blah, blah. This makes a more seamless adjustment for AJ Hinch if Parker, God forbid, really struggles. You put Vierling, start playing him more in the outfield, and you have another infield option that you feel good about. Like this actually, I don't want to say solves problems, but it gives you solutions to potential problems more. I don't know if enough people are kind of looking at it that way.
Yeah, I think that can be hard for, yeah, there are a lot of people out there still kind of grasping this new world we live in which it's not nine starters and four bench players. It's 13 guys on the roster who are all going to be used a lot. The idea of Matt Vierling being able to play outfield, being able to move around is a big part of that. I get not everyone loves it, but it's the world we are living in, and it's why a signing like Gio Urshela makes the totality of the roster better. There are two moves this offseason that Scott Harris didn't have to make, and that's signing Shelby Miller and that's signing Gio Urshela. Scott could have said, we're good in the bullpen. Instead, went and got one more veteran. He could have said, we're good at third base. Went and got a veteran guy. It's not Matt Chapman, but it's a solid ball player, a guy who's been around. So, two moves that could get you one or two extra wins throughout the course of the season, which just maybe will make a difference. I like it. I like it. That actually shows me a little bit of competitiveness in Scott Harris saying, hey, yeah, we're not just going to roll out whoever. Like, we do care about third base. We, within reason, within the context of where we're at as an organization, but we want to make this roster better. And this is certainly an example of it. So here we are. We will see what the next domino to fall is. And here's the thing: when someone gets hurt, when there's an injury in this infield or in the outfield, you're going to be feeling in a lot better shape because then you can bring up the Kreidler or the Jay Hin instead of bringing up the guy after that who maybe isn't even on the 40-man roster right now.